Hello, Alan. I'm pleased to report we've got your Solex carburetors finished. Going to test them for you here, but I got a little spiel I want to go through first in terms of installation of the carburetors. When you're installing your fuel lines, you're going to want to use two wrenches, one to stabilize the fitting in the float bowl cover and the other one to do the actual wrenching. You don't want to allow this thing to twist so that it doesn't pull the threads out of the float bowl cover. Another thing you're going to want to do is when you install the carburetors, you're going to want to install them loose and then wiggle them around to where you can install this air log, your big air log, and wiggle around to where you can install the air log on all 8 studs, and then and only then will you snug up the carburetors to the intake manifold. That's because there's enough movement that if you don't have the carburetors lined up properly, they won't fit on the air log won't fit on, and it'll be very frustrating for you. So put the carbs in there where they wiggle a little bit, line everything up, snug down a couple of bolts on each carburetor, and then remove the air log. Do your final tightening on the carburetors underneath and on top. Reinstall the air log just to make sure you nothing changed. And in terms of installation, 1/4-inch drive swivel sockets are great. You don't need anything more than 1/4-inch drive to get the job done. You're not assembling the Eiffel Tower. The 1/4-inch drive will do just fine, and then you can get up underneath there and makes access much easier. Let's see here. What else? We're going to go over before we start, we're going to go over the actual adjusting of things. You've got let me take this off the tripod. Now you've got 3 adjustments that you get to make. One is you can adjust the angle of dangle for the choke levers, and this the screw and jam nut adjust the levers up and down to where they will line up with the cable coming straight down. Make sure your cable is well lubed and pulls smoothly. Next, you are going to be able to adjust your idle, which is right here. I'll adjust it for you, but you have that ability if you so choose to adjust the idle, and all that does is just opens up the throttle more by pushing on the throttle lever. And the other adjustment that's critical is the idle mixture screw. On the second barrel of each carburetor, these are blanked off and these are dummies, don't touch them. This idle mixture screw is the one that you hear people talking about in carburetors, where you screw it in until it stops and then you back it out 1.5 turns for your basic setting. Well, I will have done all that for you, but that's what this screw is, and this is what is critical for getting your air fuel mixture correct, and that is something that you can play with, and I'll show you how that affects the carburetor's operation. But you screw it in till the engine stumbles, you screw it out till the engine stumbles, and then you get the midpoint. And in terms of screwing it out, we're talking about just on these, just a little bit of adjustment is necessary. Another thing that's very confusing for most people is this this screw and its little jam nut or locking screw right here. And this screw goes down and touches on the second barrel and artificially closes it after you've done some hard acceleration and all 4 barrels open up. And when you back off from the throttle, this pin right here artificially closes the second barrel. And there's a very finite relationship between this pin and the second barrel, and the way you check it is right here with this counterweight. And so you just want just a hint of movement there. You don't want this to be screwed down so tight that it binds on here, because what that does is actually when you screw it down tight here, it starts to artificially open up the first barrel, and so you can actually adjust your idle from here, but that's not what you're supposed to do. And let's see, and of course linkage is very critical. I'll give you instructions on the linkage. Fuel filtration is very critical. You need to have clean fuel, because if you don't have clean fuel, the G55 idle jet will get clogged up. And these are real easy to address. You'll know these are clogged when you can't idle, when the car won't idle, but you can start it and you can blip the throttle and it'll run above idle. And if it isn't idling. If you come back off on the throttle and it won't idle, it's because this jet is clogged, and it's really easy to address. Just unscrew it, and in the end of it is a very tiny hole, and when that hole gets a piece of grit in it from poor fuel filtration and clogs that jet, then you have lost idle, because that is the only thing that that jet does, is allows the car to idle. Now then, if you happen to be on the road and this happens and you have a screwdriver handy, all you have to do is take this jet out and replace it with this jet, because this one is never used. It just sits there and plugs up a hole. And so this jet should always be clean because it's never used, and you can just swap jets around and you'll be able to get going if you're on the road. All you need is a screwdriver. Let's see what else. I think that's it. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put this on the tripod and make sure we're lined up here where you can see something. And what I want you to see is tuning the carburetors, and we're using a synchrometer, so you can see the readings there. Let's get this over here. Over here a little bit. There we go. See the reading there. You can see the reading here, reading here. Now then, what we want to achieve is through the wonderfulness of the machine work that has been done, the second barrels will stay closed at idle, and that gives you your nice idle. And then what you want to do is check your airflow going through. Let's go back here. Okay, you're going to check your airflow here, which we don't want any airflow going through here, or minimal airflow. The factory, the best they could do would be like around 2.5, and you'll see that these are drawing almost no air whatsoever, and that helps give you your good idle. Now, on the first barrel of each carburetor, where we are flowing air, we want to balance them so that they're both pulling the same amount of air. We don't really care what the number is, just as long as they're both the same. Generally, in these situations, between 4 and 6 is going to be our range, and that's going to depend on your idle speed. And that's just a matter of personal preference. I'm going to set them at about 700 RPM, but I'm also going to show you that they will idle down even lower than that, just for fun. Let's see, of course, we've got a cold engine, so I want to demonstrate a cold start. Your choke operates a lever back here, so you can actually see the, let's see if I can show you right here. Okay, here's your throttle lever. Watch this move as I operate the choke. See that just moving a little bit there? Okay, that's what you're doing. When you pull the choke, all you're doing is artificially opening up the throttle. And what you'll do is you'll pull the choke halfway or all the way, start the engine, and then as it warms up, you'll back off on the choke. But you can start the car and drive it with the choke anywhere you want. Just helping you start the car and helping you with the idle speed when it's cold. And then as it warms up, gradually just push in your choke lever. But you'll see these things idle very nicely when they're cold. Of course, cold is relative because right now it's about 85 degrees out. But and we got our tachometer here to check RPM. So you want to make sure that you have fuel in the carburetors. Use your lever on your fuel pump and actuate the lever and make sure you got fuel in the carburetors, because they will bleed down as they sit. And of course, the quality of the fuel is such nowadays that it evaporates very quickly. So make sure you got fuel in the carburetors. Let's see, we've got battery, got switch on, choke. Now the only way to adjust the carburetors is when they're fully warmed up. So we're gonna get them warmed up now. And you're driving with the choke on, and here you go. You want to accelerate a little bit, so no problem. nice idle. Here's our tachometer. Alright, let's get this warmed up now. Alright, checking our radiator, thermostat is opened. We can now adjust the carburetor. So, the only way you can adjust the carburetors is by disconnecting the fuel line. You have to disconnect. Alright, let me get set up here. Alright, got our tachometer. The only way you can adjust the carburetors is make sure the linkage is disconnected. See the change in idle? I don't have the linkage adjusted perfectly. So what you want to do is check for airflow. So we want minimal airflow out of the second barrel. There's 1.5. There's 1.5. So we're exceeding factory standards. Now then, what we want to check is airflow coming from the first barrel of each carburetor. So that looks like 5.5 to 6. 5.5 to 6. Now then, we're running at about a 750 RPM. So if you want to have a slower RPM, we're going to adjust back out each idle adjusting screw at the same amount. And then we're going to check. I meant to tell you, this is what you need is a synchrometer. It's what's called a synchrometer. Alright, so now we are running right at 5. And at 5, our RPM has dropped down to 600, give or take. We can go down even lower just for fun. Back off a little bit more. Alright, we're at a little bit over 4, 4.5. 4.5. Alright, it depends on its. That's the only problem with these electronic RPM scales. They read everything and they're all over the place. So we're running around between 4 and 500 RPM. So that's too low, but what we want is around 700. So I'm going to bump up the idle, but just give you an idea that how well the engine idles at that low RPM. That's all due to the machine work that we had done. Alright, let's bump this back up to 700, 750 RPM idle. This thing's all over the place, but it's running about in the 750 range. Let's check our airflow. We're at 6 there. Almost 6 there, so let's bump up just a smidge here. Alright, now, idle mixture screws. Let's show you by doing the idle mixture screws. See how that affects things. Now, let go of the linkage here. Get the camera readjusted. You can see what's going on. Idle mixture screws. Now I want to hold this up so I don't have a runaway engine. And here's our idle mixture screw right here. And you should be able to hear the change in the RPM of the engine, speed of the engine. So I'm going to screw this in. Here's so you cobby. Back it out. Then you get cobby again, so screw it back in. And we want our smoothest idle. And this is just a matter of feel and listening. If you have a manometer, you can hook it up to this little port right here. So we're getting our best running. Now you're going to want to, the reason you've got a turnbuckle here is so you can dial in your how the linkage works. When you snap on your linkage, you want to not have the idle changed. And that's why there's a turnbuckle here, because this is the final one to adjust so that it just snaps in place and nothing changes. Yeah, that's not bad. I need to adjust this a little bit better, but that's for the fun of multiple carburetors and linkage. So now we're gonna there we go. Let's see if my linkage is adjusted properly. I can hear the engine idle change. So I'm gonna back this off just a smidge. Let's just warm up. Change the idle. Alright. Get it down just a little bit more. Alright. Let's check our airflow. Alright. Let's see. I moved the camera. Alright. Check our airflow. That's 5.5. 5, so what we're going to do is bring this one down on this side. There we go. 5 there. 5 there. Running a consistent 650, 700 RPM. Got some really nice carburetors for you. Do a hot start. I think you'll be happy with those carburetors. Thank you for your patience.